Shanghai's lockdown hits Apple. The company's major suppliers in the region have suspended operations, bringing production to a halt. 3 Chinese cities house more billionaires than New York, but China's GDP per capita remains a small fraction of America's. What's behind it? Is Taiwan preparing for war? The island's military released a handbook for its citizens, telling them what to do in case of a wartime emergency. And for those watching our full episode, similar questions rise over military developments in China. Beijing's latest economic policy may offer clues. An expert breaks it down. And a trade standoff with China ends in success for Taiwan. The island is exporting more pineapples than ever, despite a Chinese import ban from last year that could have crippled the market. We look at how the island did it. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Apple may be facing a production snag. Some of the tech giant's suppliers have suspended manufacturing in Shanghai due to the city's lockdown restrictions. Taiwan's Pegatron Core assembles iPhones for Apple. The company said on Tuesday that it had halted operation at its Shanghai plant and its nearby Kunshan plant. These are Pegatron's only iPhone manufacturing bases. And the company makes roughly 20 to 30% of all iPhones. Pegatron said resuming work will depend on getting clearance from authorities. Quanta is another key MacBook maker from Taiwan and has also suspended production in Shanghai since April. Its key production site was put to halt in accordance with the city's virus restriction protocols. Quanta's other clients include Dell and HP, while about 20% of the company's total notebook making capacity is based in Shanghai. But that's not all. German auto parts giant Bosch also suspended output at its Shanghai site and put 2 other plants in Shanghai and its neighbor Taichung City under closed-loop operation, meaning workers are isolated inside. On Monday, Shanghai classified more than 7,000 areas as low risk and allowed residential compounds to reopen in those areas. That means about 20% of the city's population has been set free, with limits. Residents there are still confined to their neighborhoods and districts in the city, and leaving Shanghai is still prohibited, though there's still confusion about how freely people can move around. Many residents are still waiting for permission from their residential committees. While one resident said she left home to take a brief scooter ride after getting permission, but was later told she could no longer do so. In Shanghai, some people are actually dying from the lockdown itself instead of COVID due to how strict the lockdown is. Some residents told us they can't get medical care. NTD's Don Ma has the story.
From the poor to the rich, people in Shanghai are struggling to get medical care. The assistant to the president of a multi-billion-dollar Chinese company couldn't get medical help amid the lockdown. Wei Guiguo from China Pacific Securities died in his home from internal bleeding in the brain. The lockdown in Shanghai has severely reduced essential medical services. Many hospitals' emergency services are not operating, and many residents can't get emergency care. As a result, people are dying due to the lockdown measures rather than COVID. In this clip, it looks like the man's having a seizure. The person recording has called the emergency services, but no one's picking up. A number of Shanghai residents have told us over the phone they are experiencing similar situations. A woman told us that she's vomiting blood. She called the Chinese emergency number, but no one came to help.
I'm at home now vomiting blood and having trouble breathing. No one came to my aid. We called a lot. The police, the ambulance. No one came.
Footage shows people desperately pleading in front of hospitals for help, but in vain. Another resident told us in tears in a call that her father has a heart condition, but she can't find a hospital for him.
My father's heart is already experiencing discomfort. I can't find a hospital or an ambulance. He's 63 years old. He lives all by himself. The food situation is not important anymore. He's already unconscious. Do you understand?
But there could be a glimmer of hope coming out of Shanghai today. Authorities are easing the lockdown a bit, and some residents were allowed to go out their homes. Maybe authorities are seeing residents' hardship because health officials said they're easing restrictions even though Shanghai doesn't have the virus under control. Don Ma, NTD News.
China and India are still buying Russian oil amid Western countries' sanctions on Russia. But U.S. officials revealed a message from President Joe Biden to Indian Prime Minister Modi that buying more oil from Russia was not in India's best interest and could hamper the U.S. response to the war in Ukraine.
US President Joe Biden on Monday urged Indian leader Narendra Modi not to increase his country's reliance on Russian oil and gas. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, India has tried to balance its ties with Moscow and the West. It hasn't put sanctions on Russia, unlike other members of the so-called Quad, including Japan, Australia and the US. And Biden's talks with Modi were part of the larger push to keep the pressure on Moscow for an invasion it calls a special military operation. US officials say Biden told Modi buying more oil from Russia was not in India's interests and could hinder the US response to the war in Ukraine.
Mr. Prime Minister, our continued consultation and dialogue are key to ensuring the U.S.-Indian relationship continues to grow deeper and stronger.
A US official told Reuters that Biden stopped short of making a concrete ask of Modi on Monday. But they also said Biden told Modi India's position in the world would not be enhanced by relying on Russian energy sources. India has been lured by steep discounts after Western sanctions came in, snapping up at least 13 million barrels of Russian crude since late February. Data compiled by Reuters shows in the whole of last year they only bought 16 million. Later on Monday, India's External Affairs Minister pushed back on a reporter question on India's energy purchases from Russia and pointed instead to Europe.
I would suggest that your attention should be focused on Europe. I suspect, looking at the figures, probably our total purchases for the month would be less than what Europe does in an afternoon.
Modi also said he had suggested in recent conversations with Russia that President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky hold direct talks.
India seems to be walking a tightrope in balancing its relationship with world powers. China, Russia, and the West are urging India to choose a side. But the divide extends beyond the war in Ukraine to the competition between the Democratic West and the Chinese Communist Party. Foreign ministers from Russia, China, and the UK visited India in recent months. Japan's prime minister also met with his Indian counterpart. Australia signed an interim free trade deal with India, lifting most of the tariffs between the two countries. Where do the world's billionaires come from? According to this year's Who Run Global Rich list, most of them are from China. Here's a look at the current rankings and how they've changed since last year. And in case the watermarks and Chinese characters in the background look strange, the official Who Run Global Rich List 2022 graphic appears on an ad promoting a Chinese rich wine brand. As for the list itself, the world's top 3 cities home to the most billionaires are all in China, followed by New York in 4th place. Beijing houses a whopping 144 billionaires. Shanghai comes in second with 121, and Shenzhen with 113 has overtaken New York to become the 3rd largest. New York is home to 110, and London ranks 5th with 101. The growing concentration of wealth in China has caught experts' attention. According to World Bank, China's GDP per capita totaled over $10,000 in 2020, reaching only 1/6 of the U.S. Who Run Report chief researcher Rupert Hochworth called it almost more of a wake-up call for the rest of the world. He added the rising number of billionaires in Shenzhen shows a mega trend. Shenzhen is home to a huge manufacturing sector and has earned the nickname the world's factory due to the large presence of global manufacturing companies there. The city is also home to some of China's biggest companies, including telecom giant Huawei and tech giant Tencent. Both are on Washington's black trade list, placed there because of national security concerns over the Chinese regime's influence over them. This year's Who-run list was published last month. The full impacts of the pandemic and China's strict zero-cases pandemic policy on China's economy are still unclear. Despite China's rise in the ranks of the Who-run list, none of China's wealthy made it onto the top 10 list for most affluent individuals. Most of those members are U.S.-based, with Tesla founder Elon Musk holding the top spot. A first for Taiwan's military. The island's defense force released a civil defense handbook for the first time on Tuesday. The handbook gives citizens survival guidance in a case of a war scenario. A Taiwan defense official further explained, saying the handbook provides information on how citizens should react during a military crisis and possible disasters to come. As the Russia-Ukraine war continues, the island is getting more attention, specifically how it should respond to Beijing's increasing pressure. Beijing claims the island as part of mainland China, though the island is governed by its own democratic constitution and leadership. Even still, China has never ruled out using force to control Taiwan and has stepped up military activities surrounding the island in the past 2 years. Taiwan's handbook details how to find shelter and supplies and offers tips for preparing emergency first aid kits. It uses comic strips and pictures to illustrate those details. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen is overseeing a broad modernization program to strengthen the island's forces. According to plans unveiled last year, Taiwan plans to reform training for its reserve forces. What's more, the government is looking to extend compulsory military service for citizens beyond the current 4-month requirement. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program on YouTube. That's after being demonetized for a year. Full episodes can be watched on our partner platform, Handbook TV. To sign up for a 14-day free trial, please click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you tomorrow.
Every once in a while, something comes along so masterful, it leaves you in awe. So inspiring, it changes your life. So beautiful, you wish it would never end. When that happens, it's something not to be missed. Shen Yun, an all-new production every year.
The performance was enchanting.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
It touches you. It really does.
The expertise of the dancers was really, really strong.
To know that it was live music was really fantastic.
We didn't want to miss this.
Make sure you see it.
Have to come. Life-changing.